Every morning, the team at the Exchange meets to discuss the top stories of the day. Here's a look behind closed doors and what we think makes the cut. Amazon's spending plans are starting to catch up with the company. It rarely makes a profit, but in its latest quarter had its biggest loss in 14 years. That's despite a 20% increase in sales. Of course, that means Amazon spends a lot of money. It invests heavily in its warehouses to speed up shipping. It also puts a lot of cash into new areas and products, something that the company may now be rethinking. On a conference call, its CFO said, "We certainly have been in several years now of what I will call an investment mode, but we know that we have to be very selective about which opportunities we pursue." Amazon's stock fell more than 8% as investors seem to reconsider whether the growth approach is worth sticking around for. It's something we debated in our meeting this morning, too. They generate so much operating income and then they take all of it. It's almost they make X and they take X plus 1 and put it into the business, which is what you do in startup mode.
Expand, yeah.
It's fantastic. It's the opposite of a dividend-paying company.
Amazon is still seeing itself as this company that wants to grow and grow and grow. They're starting all these new things. Also, that growth is starting to slow, right? And that's making investors really nervous.
Well, it seems like it's stretching itself really thin. These little tangents. When I think Amazon, I think they're going to ship me something off of the internet.
Yeah.
And I don't think about their Fire
and their
phone,
whole
that's for
their
sure.
whole cloud computing business, right?
A lot of big corporations right now are returning to the core.
Why is time up? Why can't it just keep going?
The fundamental reason to buy a stock is as a share in a company that generates profit.
That's
Investors
huge.
start to say, why am I owning this again? On the other side of the ledger, Microsoft stock closed up more than 2% today after it earned more than expected. Though there have been concerns about big tech companies, especially this earnings season, Microsoft is managing to hold steady. The stock is up more than 22% this year. In the quarter, sales climbed 11%. Sales of cloud services soared up 128%. It's a small part of the business, but fast growing. Digging beneath the numbers, there are some concerns. Microsoft sold 9.3 million Lumia smartphones. That was more than last quarter, but dragged competitors, and it still makes most of its money selling traditional software, and sales there are essentially flat. In our meeting, we wondered why the stock was reacting so very positively.
There's an analyst that said that future Microsoft Windows updates will have to be free, the same way that Apple does them. If that's true, there goes half their business.
Wow.
Well, they've been telegraphing Xbox and gaming and mobile as the future for a while now. It happens.
It's just unfortunately still a very small part of their business.
It's like a newspaper going to online. They're saying this is going to happen one day, and they're actually doing it. So.
Maybe seeing them growing their sales in those businesses is precisely what investors need to see. We talked earlier about Ford ditching its plan for a $2 billion investment in Canada, but it is still making big investments elsewhere. It's redesigned its top-selling truck, the F-150, investing $1.4 billion since 2009. Ford got some hefty improvements for its money. The truck's new aluminum body is part of what's lightened it up by 700 pounds over the current version. The benefits from that could be huge, especially at the pump. But for now, all that innovation spending is weighing on Ford's profit. That fell 34% in the latest quarter. In our meeting, we wondered if the losses will be worth it in the long run.
Short-term pain for long-term gain. We've reinvented the wheel, so from now on we can now sell much more efficient wheels that are going to last longer and make more money.
And companies using their cash on hand to innovate and create new product and spend. This is exactly what you want companies with profit to do. It's a great story.
Environment, this is a big, big deal.
They know they need to make it more responsive to the changing ideas about efficiency. In the past, there's research that shows that in America, every time they made a vehicle more fuel efficient, people didn't take that and save money. They went up to a bigger car.
The technology that they've developed for this makes its way through
That'd be great.
all vehicles.
Yeah. Investors may not have seen the potential we did. The stock traded down more than 4% today. We showed you earlier that overall North American stock markets had strong gains. News of a confirmed case of Ebola in New York, though, didn't rattle them as much as some had thought it might. An economist with BMO Capital Markets said concern about the possible spread of the disease and the potential impact of measures to contain it is weighing on sentiment this morning. In our meeting, a good chunk of our conversation centered on whether or not that fear is reasonable. Are economic consequences to fear, rational or not? When people feel it, it has a real effect on the economy. And if that's the case, and it's the case despite the reassurances from all of these august bodies, maybe they should take measures that are unreasonable. Even if it's just to reassure people and they're being irrational, it's worth it from an economic point of view.
The press conference last night, I found actually quite reassuring, quite reasonable, and they're telling people not to be afraid. And so I think that's what people should be hearing.
The question, I guess, is, are markets overreacting when they react to the potential?
Of course it is.
Of course it's an overreaction.
Time now for CBC's senior Washington correspondent, Neil Macdonald. And Neil, you're seeing this upfront and personal. It has become an election issue in Washington. We were really debating not whether or not people should be afraid of Ebola, but the fact that they are and what to do about that. What are you seeing?
You know, it's incredibly irresponsible what's going on down here, Amanda. The administration, President Obama, and entities like the World Bank and the IMF are trying to reassure people, and they're trying to rely on science. They know the damage that fear can do. But there is an election going on here, the midterms, in about 10 days. And the amount of demagoguery and the amount of fear-mongering is remarkable. There are politicians who are calling for arbitrary travel bans, compulsory 21-day quarantines, which fly in the face of medical science. Up on the Hill today, in Capitol Hill in hearings, they were demanding that medical authorities resign, citing worst-case scenarios for this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, the facts are that there have been 9 cases of Ebola infection in the United States, including this doctor today. 7 of them, 7 have recovered. 1 has died, and that doctor is in treatment. But all of that is chaff in the wind.
So
I guess logic doesn't play a part here. Electoral politics.
The argument that I would make is, and I'm not trying to win an election anywhere, is although science is on the side of the current behavior and procedures, because fear can be so damaging to economies, and we've seen that before with terrorist attacks, with SARS. Is there a case to be made that I would say in this case, maybe you do ask for quarantines, maybe there are travel bans, maybe there are special planes to ferry healthcare workers back and forth from their home countries in order, not because it's rational, but because there's irrational fear out there?
How about relying on the word of experts and medical experts rather than what's going on now? I mean, I'll tell you something else fear can do. It can get you reelected, and these people know it. You've got Democrats and Republicans in tight races. Addressing this, and they're trying to turn it into a partisan issue. It's remarkable. It's President Obama's fault. It's the Republicans' fault. Democrats are saying the Republicans cut health care, which they didn't. They're saying that the Republicans took an axe to the National Institute of Health, and that's why we've got an Ebola scare. The Republicans are saying it's Obama's incompetence. This is ridiculous. The system has worked so far. Everybody knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And turning it into a partisan issue is the height of irresponsibility, and that's exactly what's going on. But nobody ever said politics here was very responsible.
Or anywhere. I mean, I would agree that using an issue like this for any kind of political momentum or gain seems irresponsible at best. The only thing that I would say or suggest is we do know that people aren't always responsible either, and that if there's a single way that Ebola will become a global pandemic, it's on an airplane. And so the discussion we had is, do you do the Nigeria way and shut down your borders and close travel for a period of time and fight it on the ground in Africa and just get rid of it?
Or do you let people come in and rely on them to tell the truth and not intimidate them, and the better for which to track this disease and control it? Let me tell you something else, Amanda. Where I live in Montgomery County is where the NIH is, the National Institute of Health, and there have been people hospitalized, infected Ebola patients hospitalized there. The authorities there have been saying, for heaven's sake, 36,000 people in this country died last year of influenza.
Right.
Influenza, though, doesn't make your organs blow up and your bones turn to jelly and your eyes pop out like it does in the movies, which is where people's education is mostly on this. And the responsible thing is to give people the information they need and let them make sensible decisions, which is what's been happening so far. No thanks to politicians who are trying to turn it into a political football.
So you'd be disappointed if anybody, including the WHO or Barack Obama, responded to the fear. You'd like them to stay rational and stay on the side of science.
I'd like them to do what the medical experts want them to do, because medical experts are trained to deal with this stuff, and politicians aren't. Acting on public fears is an easy thing to do, and it might get you elected, but it's certainly not in the best interest of them or the economy. If the kind of fears that have been driving, that have been isolating West Africa, penetrate into the deepest, most liquid economy in human history, imagine the fallout. Imagine what would happen if people started withdrawing
from the public square. That's the argument that I'm making on the other side.
Started not going to restaurants, not flying on airplanes.
Right.
Just imagine.
Well,
that's what the White House is concerned about.
Of course, but maybe the way to stave that off is to reassure that there are different procedures in place to make sure that Ebola doesn't land on America's shores.
There have been flubs by medical staff here but at the end of the day, you kind of have to trust your doctors. You know, I'll tell you what, I would rather trust the head of the CDC or the National Institute of Health than, you know, the guy who's making up attack ads for the Democratic or Republican Party.